Buongiorno from Barcelona to everyone. It's an absolute pleasure being here in the MoodleMoot, Italy. Uh, Today, you will be the first MoodleMoot, in fact, that will have this presentation. It's the first time that we will present in the community the course creation new project and the result of it, and the 4.0 course creation modules. So I will start sharing my screen. Okay. The road to 4.0, it's been a long road to arrive to Moodle 4.0, and it's a big of a change in the end. This is a small timeline about the project. On August of 2020, it was announced that Moodle 4.0 will be a 18th month release. So that means that 4.0 it's a bit different than the rest of the releases, because it takes many times to design and analyze what Moodle should become in the future. So it's a kind of a change in the way Moodle thinks about it, and we start doing things in a different way in many aspects. So from August till March, it was a time where the 3.10 was ongoing, and meanwhile, on the community and also in Moodle HQ, where we are designing all the stuff we want for 4.0. And then in March, it started coming on and integrating all the code. Then on October, it came the code freeze, and we estimate that the release date will be on January. Okay, that's only cold data about the release. But the important part is, what are the main changes in 4.0? I will talk only about the HQ changes, the Moodle HQ projects, because it's the part I live in my everyday. All the new features for 4.0 are divided in 3 main projects. So all the developer team are also divided in all those 3 projects. In 4.0, we focus entirely on navigation, on giving a unified navigation through all the platform. This is a big project that will start here in 4.0 and will evolve over the next releases for sure. And it's a very important thing, because sometimes, as you may know, when a user came to Moodle for the first time, it's frightening, the amount of navigation and settings and things that happens all the time on the screen. So it's a very important project for Moodle. The second one is the one I came here to talk about it. It's the course creation, which it's the seed to change the way courses are built in Moodle. And all this presentation will be about all the new features, all the changes that it requires, because most of the course creation was like 10 to 15 years old. So it's a part of Moodle that many people want to improve, but it was hard because it was old code. And finally, the third project was the student experience. It's focused completely on the student navigation, and the student comprehension of the course and goals. And we have another addition, which is very interesting for administrators mainly. It's the report builder, which is a project that incorporates a feature from Moodle Workplace, and that will be the next session. In fact, Paul will present you the report builder. Okay, let's start from the beginning. The presentation will have three parts. Each part will be more technical than the previous one, so we will start slow with a review of all the new features we have in the course creation. So this will be mainly a demo. This instance you can see here is the latest versions of Moodle 4.0. It has many things that they are not even integrated yet, but it's yet to come to the master branch. So this is the Moodle of the future, I would say. When you access the platform for the first time, you will see that there's more or less the same structure, but we saw some new elements. For example, all the top bar has changed. We have all, and the edit mode now is integrated on the top bar. So if I scroll down any page, I will have this button right here, which is something most community want for many time in general. And the other new thing is those tabs here. This is from the navigation project. This is the kind of improvements we want for Moodle 4.0 and future versions. And this new tab here, the site administration, it's only for admins, of course, and the other is the course tab, which will have many new features here. But this presentation, it's about the course, so we can access a course. All right, I can close this now. For now, this is what users will get when they access a course in a topics format course in Moodle 4.0. As you can see, the aesthetics is white as the previous version. It's clean, it's Bootstrap based, all, but it's different from the other version. We can see many things different from a regular course. The first one, it's the width of the page. It's limited. This way, the course will get a better format also in mobile. So all the design, the redesign, it's meant to work perfect in mobile. The other new thing is that those tabs here, those are replacing this. In this version, we also have this menu here, but this menu will disappear from the course, and we have a more direct way to access all the important options in the course. So I can go to participants directly as a tab in the course. This is and also I can have those settings, the typical setting forms and so on, the grades. All the important parts are here now, so it's easier for the teacher to access to it. The other big difference we see is that we have an all-demanded feature, which is the topics can be collapsed. This is a new thing in 4.0, and in fact, if I just refresh all the page, those closed topics will remain the same. So you can even log out in the platform, and if you collapse the topic, it will be still collapsed here. The other have more the information. It's more easy to read in general, even if we have complex availability conditions. For example, it compacts it so you can show more. This is the new usability of the course. But that's not all. We have two new buttons here and here. As you can see, this is a course, a standard course, but we don't have blocks at all. That is because the blocks are now a drawer. So it's a drawer we can open and close here. And it's also a user preference. So if a user just closes the drawer, it will be closed until he opens again. So from a usability perspective, it's quite comfortable for the user. But the other side has a major new feature, which is the course index. This course index, it's mainly a summary of the course content. It's also collapsible the same way as contents are now. And it summarizes all the information of the course. I can click an activity and I will go inside the activity. I have all the topics here. And this is from the view point of view. This is common also for students. Our students will also get this course index view. And okay, when we enable edition, then in edition mode, there are many, many changes here. So here's where most new features came on. The first thing is that we don't see the typical drag and drop icons, as you can see. We don't have it anywhere. And this is because all the drag and drop library is re-implemented from scratch in this version. So I can simply go to the course and drag some element like this. So it doesn't matter what place of the card, of the activity card I choose, I pick to drag it. And I can drag it to a section, or I can drag it as regular. But as you can see, the feedback is quite different. It's faster than the previous version. We just removed all the legacy UI code to do it. So now it's native, browser native. It's quite faster. But it also happens the same with sections. So I can drag sections whenever I want. So I can move that section to over the section 1, for example, and will be moved. And the same happens in the course index. That's a new thing. So I can drag one activity here, also in the course index. And you will see that the content is also changing. So I can move, for example, this page 28 under the page 26, and you will see that it's here now. And you can do the same with topics. So I can move topics around using the course index, which it's very convenient for long courses. But that's not all, because we re-implement the drag and drop, and we think, what if we just start interacting with every element? So I can drag this page directly to the content. This is a great addition for course edition, especially in long courses like this one, where you can go to the last topic and just move it to the first one, for example. So it's quite fast to use. Okay. Another new feature is that if you remember the old version, you have a drag and drop icon here near the activity. And when you click it, it opens up a very weird modal, which represents the structure of the course in a single list. And it's quite hard to use it. That was made for accessibility, but in the end, it's quite hard to read that list. It in the tools of the activity. So I can move directly here, and it will present a similar structure than the course index. So if I click the new destination, this activity will be moved to the desired location. And it happens the same with activities. I can move activities directly from the toolbar, which will make easier to move topics in a long courses, because I can click just the last topics and will be moved to that section. But that's not all. We have another nice addition to the course creation, which is those buttons here, the add topic. Now they are displayed under each single topic. So I can insert in between topics. But it's not only this, because if I click that topic here, it will create instantly a topic. So you don't need to refresh all the page to use topics here. So I can just delete it as well without refreshing the page. So again, it's just faster to make the course in general. And it's not only faster, it's also more accessible, because all the features can be used using the key, well, at least the new features can be used with the keyboard. If I go to the move one, I can use the keyboard to move everything, so it's more accessible than before. And the other, let's see if I have one. Another improvement we have here is if I access as a student, I will log out and log in as a student now to the same course. Okay, I will go to exactly the same course I was before. So when in Moodle 3.9, the done checks of the activities, the completion checks are removed and replaced by these manual buttons. And there was very complaints about it, and it's normal because it's an information that should appear in the course. Now all this information is displayed in the course index. So as you can see, when a student do or undo, in this case, the activity is also marked in the course index. Okay, I will. The rest of the demo will be as admin because it's easier. Okay, those are the main difference, the main new features for the course creation. And now we will go deeper in the technical part. So let's go to the part 2 of the presentation, which is focused on what happens to the previous formats. Most of you probably have some third-party plugins, format plugins installed in their systems. So let's see how's the migration process for that plugins and what happens in general. So again, let's see what's happened when we use a Moodle previous version format in Moodle 4.0. For this demo, I used probably one of the oldest course formats around with its collapsed topics. Many of you may probably use it in the past or even nowadays. So when a user access, this is a plugin compatible with 3.9, but it's not migrated at all to 4.0. And what happens here, that works because all the code is retrocompatible. But so we can use the same course formats we have in the past, but we will lose some new features in the way. That is because it was not possible to do all the things retrocompatible. We will see more in more detail later why this happens. So from the point of view of the student or the person who is viewing the course, all the legacy formats will be compatible, or most of them will be compatible. I would say 99% of the cases. Even when I enable edition, you will see that most of the edition will be more or less the same. It won't change that much. But here is where they come all where the difference begins. We re-implement all the course edition modules on the front-end part. And the way they are programmed in the past, they are almost like 15 to 10 years old. So we don't program that way anymore. And the problem is that most formats rely completely on that old way of doing things. So when the new Moodle 4.0 detects that a plugin is an old version, they use the previous version of the libraries. So in this case, what happens is that we cannot drag as the new version. So I cannot drag from any part of the section. I need to go to the handler. So this is using the old drag and drop library, the UE-based one. And even if I click on the drag icon, we will see the previous modal to move I told you before. This is the old version. So country plugins won't get most of the new features, but it will work. As you can see, it doesn't have any course index. That is because formats need to specify that they are compatible with course index. It's an opt-in feature, so it's not compatible by default. Most of the features are opt-in, not opt-out. So we'll see that it won't have the move tool either here. And this is what happened. All right, this is what happens when you install Moodle 4.0 with a legacy format. But okay, I don't have all the features, but what do I need to have all of them? That is what we should see in this part. I will enable all the debug messages because this is in this instance I disabled all of them, so we are seeing as a regular user. But if I turn on all the debug messages, I will see that when I access an old course format, a legacy course format, we will see this situation. Okay, that's a different scenario than what you were watching before. All of those are deprecation messages, but don't panic. Most of them are the same in the end. And now we're going to see why is that. Okay, we'll turn to the presentation. Let's see. The first thing you need to know is that the course format now is a completely subsystem in Moodle. Now comes the technical part. So for one of you who are not developers, it could be tougher to understand. But I promise it will get worse later in the part 3. This is just the introduction to the technical part. There's a completely new subsystem called course format. And so this means that all the required methods, renders, templates, tests, everything, even the new web services are stored in a separate subsystem. I put you the related issues, where we create those subsystems. And the important thing is in Moodle 4.3, all the deprecated render methods will be removed. So for one of you who have custom course formats, it's about time to start adapting your course formats. It's not that hard in the end, but it's changing. In fact, it's changing to the way the rest of the Moodle works, because as I mentioned before, the course creation was a very old code, and they don't use the current conventions. Now it's using it, so that's the main change. Okay, those changes are that now all the course is rendered only using 3 methods. One to render a full course, another for render an individual section, and another for the activity card itself. The other big change is that now format renderers are mandatory. You cannot create a format plugin without a renderer. Those are the deprecation messages we see before in the demo. There are many output classes with its mustache classes. We will see later in the next slide what are those classes. And we deprecate 33 methods from the course renderer. So this is where all the deprecation messages came from. And we added 13 new methods to the base class that all formats will extend or extends right now. So if we take a look again to the deprecation messages, you will see that all messages are more or less the same. It's like this method here, which is a render one, is deprecated. This is one of the 33 deprecated methods. And then all the deprecation messages guide you to the correct class, your output class you need to use on your format. So I hope this way can help migrate to every format to migrate to the new version. Okay. Explain in more detail what happens here in this situation. Don't worry about this diagram. I will zoom in a second. Or not? Okay, this is not the one I want. Okay, I don't have it right now. Okay, this diagram here, it will be on the documentation, official documentation. There will be a page with all the documentation about the migration on the course formats. This represents all the deprecated methods are here on the right part with all the functions involved in the previous version of the course rendering. The left part is the current one, the 3 methods that renders everything. And the central part are the new templates plus output classes we use. So as you can see, we have a class for everything now. We have a class to render the full course. We have a class to render the Add section button. We have a class for the navigation, one for the availability, the header of the section, the activity. Everything is split in different files. So if we go to the code, sorry for that, we start seeing code now. You will see that in the course format, which is the new subsystem. So in the past, this format folder was only for the plugins, almost. We have some few files there, but in general, it will be for plugins. Now it's a complete subsystem. So when we open in 4.0, I can make it bigger if you want. There's all the front-end part here, all the classes, the PHP classes. There's the formats also here that in the previous versions, but we have templates, we have tests, we have everything here now. So that's a subsystem. And if I open the output folder, which is the one that renders everything, you will see that the structure changed a bit. And we have a local, we have a content here, which represents all the elements of the course. And in case for those formats that requires to overwrite any of these output components, it's easier than before, because what a format can do, it's just create its own classes folder here and create its own output. And because it's a subsystem, you can overwrite all the output components directly here. So it will be easier. In this case, the topic format overrides one of the section outputs, which is the control menu, for adding the highlight section. So it's easier than before, because you know exactly what you are overriding from the standard course representation. So that's one of the main differences. Okay, so this diagram represents that part. You will have on the wiki soon when we open the 4.0 wiki pages. Okay, those are most of the new features in 4.0. And this small table, it's about opt-in and opt-out. Opt-in means that your plugins won't have it unless you adapt it and you add some methods to it. And opt-out means that you will have it unless you say the contrary. In this case, what happens is that the course index, the new drag and drop, the move modal are opt-in. So all the legacy formats won't have it by default. They need to implement a small method in their main class. Mainly are methods that return a Boolean to say that, yeah, I am compatible. So it's easy to migrate this part, because just implement that method and return true and see what happens. It doesn't happen the same with the indentation. The indentation is it's a peculiar feature that the idea is to replace for something else in for the 1 or for the 2. We don't know yet, but it's disabled in standard formats now, but it will be continue working in legacy formats. So when your format is ready for get rid of indentation and take the new thing that will appear, it will be a matter of adding a new method. And collapsible sections and activity displaying, it's also something that you by default you will get the new version, but you can override it and keep your own renderers methods for that. Okay. To enable and disable, this graphic here represents all the methods, new methods we add to the course format. This is the class that every course format has, every plugin has to interact with the core. And it's the class that is used to know if some format are compatible with some feature. So the orange one are the traditional ones. Those two exist since the beginning of time, I would say, mostly. But then we have the new ones. So if your plugin is compatible with course index, you need that method to say, okay, I'm compatible. So immediately your format will have the course index. The same happens with indentation. If that method returns a true, it will keep the indentation for you until it's replaced for something else. Super components is a completely new thing. That means that your interface is compatible with all the new front-end part, because all the front-end libraries has been rewritten. And it's not only the drag and drop and the move activity modal, it's also the way everything works, the collapsible, most of the Ajax, most of the actions you do in the course now works with the new library. So if you don't have that method or the method returns a false, it will still uses the previous version until 4.3. Those are for the features. Now we have another thing that changes is that in the past we use page user editing for see if the page is editing or not. That still works for modules, but in the course, you have more freedom than this, because you now have a method to decide if you want to show all the editor, the course editor, because you can customize whatever you want. So you can have a different logic to decide the edition. The same happened with renderers, and the same happened with that old thing about single and multiple sections. In the past, the logic is duplicated, and most of the logic about printing a course with one section or more section on screen was completely duplicated, and it goes through the same methods again and again. That doesn't happen anymore in 4.0. And if a format has a section, you can always say, okay, I only want to show one section. You have that method. So your view.php can simply get param from the URL and just call this method and render, and that will do the trick for you. So you don't need that methods anymore. And the last one, it's the special methods that been added for the new features. So for example, about the collapsible sections, we create 2 new methods for the preferences on the section. This is a new thing, section preferences. So in the future, your plugins can add more information to sections and will be considered as a preference. And the other addition to the course format is now they can wipe its own data. So we have a method to delete format data. So if you have tables or auxiliary data anywhere, you can define that method to wipe when it's needed. And the same happened with the highlight. This is a new thing. So if I'm on a course or normal course, probably I didn't mention yet. If I go to a format topics and I have a highlighted, for accessibility reasons, that I think I moved the highlighted very back course. Okay. This is this course is highlighted and has this label on it. So this small line here was not enough to understand from accessibility perspective. So we add this label here. So now you can define what's your label for highlighted. For example, weeks has current week and topics has highlighted simply, but your format can have several texts there. And the same happened to the page title. In the past was a mess to change the page title depending on the course content on wherever. Now your formats are free to define the page title. Okay, the last thing you need to know about the migration is that the way that the user actions interact with the HTML has changed, because we use a very old pattern until now, which is check for classes, CSS classes and HTML tags. And this is not a good practice at all, because CSS classes are meant for styling, not for logic. And now what happens is that we define that to identify what's a section in the course, we will use data attributes, which it's the way it should work in general. Into all the front-end part of the web should go with data attributes in general, I would say. And we have this attribute for. This is the attribute that the course editor will use to know if a part is a section title, or an activity, a course module. Then we'll have, in the case of the section, they will need to specify that that's a section, that is my ID as a section, and that is my number. That's another major change. In the past, when you see in the code that some section has an ID, you'll never be sure if it's the section number or if it's the ID. That won't happen anymore in Moodle 4.0. When we say that section ID, it will always refer to the section ID, at least in the front-end part. And when you see a section number, it will be always a section number. That's a very good addition to the code. And the same happened to the title. So when some element is a title, you will have an ID and a number. And for the activity, we just need the ID. But that's all the new way of detecting what the HTML element is. Just a small note, we will use the CSS classes for some actions, because not all actions are migrated to a new version, but that's something we will stop using by 4.0, hopefully. Okay. We end up the second part. This is about migration, and we enter the full technical part now. So yeah, if you want to run away, that's the moment. Okay, because here comes the architecture that supports all these new features and all the future features that will appear in the Moodle course creation. As before, we will start a demo on that. Now we will see what the wizard is doing behind the curtain. So if I go to that course, I put zoom now. The new course structure is quite different from the previous one, because in the past, all the interactions the user do in the course, it's like this. I go to an activity and I said I want to hide it. Okay, and service call, go to an actions module that triggers a web service call that say, please hide this activity. And this returns a full HTML that will replace this element. So the way it works before 4.0 is this way. So each web service returns a part of HTML that replaces the content. But that situation has a very important problem when we try to make something like the course index, because course index represents the element of the content in another way. So it's not enough to return an HTML here and replace this element. That was the way it works. And while we only have one content, now we need to know what means the return of that HTML. So we cannot do that pattern anymore, because otherwise the course index cannot do like this, hiding things also in the course index. So when we design the new course editor, we decide that we need some kind of reactive pattern, which is a modern pattern to generate the HTML not from the user interactions, but from the data. I know that sounds confusing, but I can show you what happens here what happens here behind the curtain. If I re-enable the debug, so now I will refresh the page. Okay, this is the same page, but now I'm a developer. So I put the hat of developer and I have all the footer. This is the typical footer most developers see in Moodle. And we are on a course. And here appears a new part, here, these reactive instances. This is a new developer tool we create for that version. So it sets that there's one reactive instance on that page. And if I click on that, I see that appears a panel here. And this panel presents me some data. Okay, that data is a reactive state. This means that all the all the content here, all the course index here, everything on that page is controlled, but it's controlled by this data. It's not controlled by a DOM like in before. So if you look at this thing, I see a course object, I can see a section object with an array, and furthermore, I will see an activity one. So if I scroll down a bit, I will see some activities here. Okay, that is a module, for example. Let's find out which one it's that. Module. Let's find out in the code, because this will module page. Sorry, page 27. I mean, let's see where it's in the course index. It's here. It's in the topic 4. So now, because all the front-end part, it's not driven by user actions, it's driven by data, I can simply say, okay, this this activity here, it's not user visible anymore. So I can just change, okay, that's a demo effect. It's a nice demo effect on me. Let's see with a section, for example. Let's see, section, it's easier to see. Topic 2, okay. We can see that this is topic 2 from the course index. And what we can see here is that it says that it's index collapse. So I can just change it to false and save the data. And you see that the topic is uncollapsed here. And it happens the same if I say, for example, raw data. If this is topic 1, I can say, okay, anymore, so I can change the order of the first 2 ones, and when I save, it will change the order here. So everything that changes on that data structure will change the interface, and not only in the course index. So I can unpin this panel and I can move it around, so I can see the course also here, and I can make it bigger. I can make it bigger here. So if I go to the same section, topic 2, where is topic 2? Here is topic 2. And I do exactly the same thing, but with the content collapse. And I said, okay, this is collapsed on the content. It's also collapsed in the content. So that's a reactive state. This is the data that controls everything. And this is the major change in the course edition. This is the new way we do the course editor. And the good part is all this reactive pattern can be applied in many places in Moodle right now, because it's a core library we add. What means that something is reactive? It means those 4 principles. The one is that all the interface, it's not controlled by a single AMD module anymore. So we kind of split the logic behind each singular element. So this is something that I can also show you if I open again this developer tools. And I want to check which parts of the page are controlled by that state here. I can just highlight and it gets highlighted. So each one of these boxes here are one it's controlled by an instance of an AMD module, which means that if I go to the code, I can go to the AMD modules on the course format subsystem, and I will see exactly, there's the source local, I would see this, for example, the course index is controlled by these modules. So I can go to any of these modules and see the code. So each one of these is controlling a specific thing. This one is controlling the activity on the course index. This one is controlling a section in the course index. And this one is controlling the general behavior on the course index. That is the first principle, reactivity in this case. The other you already saw it. When I update the state data, this will update the UI. So that's the only logic we take into account. So user interactions won't change the HTML in the end. That's the main principle of reactive interfaces. So they can only alter the state, and the state will alter the HTML. That is very important in the courses. And the same happens to the web services. All the new web services are designed to alter the state, not the interface. So the new web services for Course Editor are not returning HTML at all. They are returning changes in the data state. Okay, it won't take that much. I know this is a very complex part of the presentation. This is the reason why I give you a warning before starting. So if you have a plugin, which is not necessarily a course format, you can also use that reactive pattern because it's in core. It's not related to course. We can create plugins that uses it. We can, for example, has the chapters of the book as a reactive state. We can have the entries of the database. We can have many, many things as reactive in the future. So we have those modules, one for the reactive state itself, another for creating components. All the boxes you see before are extending that class. We create a special one for the drag and drop. This means that if you want the new way of drag and drop, you want your plugin to drag and drop like the new course editor, it's possible, not only for the format, you can use it whenever you want. And we also add a small object for the debug in the JavaScript console. So you can do most of the things, more things than you can do with that panel here. You can also do with the console, and there are many, many things that you can do, more things that you can do than here. So you can start playing around with this library also. And to finish the presentation, this is the diagram about what reactive means, because it's quite of a change in Moodle, this kind of new way of thinking about the front end as a complete application by its own. It's not a single page application, but almost. This means that when a user interaction came, when the user clicks a button, when drags something or whatever, it's alerting the component because the component is responsible for capturing that event. And then he cannot do anything with it because it cannot change the state, but it cannot change the HTML. But what can do is to ask the reactive instance to change it. So that is what's called triggering a mutation. So they can ask for some changes in the state, and the reactive instance will trigger a mutation. And this mutation will call web service or whatever it needs to do the job, and then we'll change the state, and the state will come back to the reactive instance, and this will notify again the component. So as you can see, it's not a direct way to update the UI, which is the last thing components will do. So this is the new architecture on the course editor. And the good part of that is that it offers you many, many new possibilities that it wasn't there before. This is the diagram with the specific modules and web services that the course editor, the new course editor architecture is based on. And all the boxes you see with dashed line are the ones that your plugins can override. So if you want more UI components that watches the state, you can implement it. If you want more mutations to change whatever you need, for example, if you add attributes to sections or to activities, you can add mutations to alter them. You can change the information of an activity, of a section, or the general course to add more information that your front-end part needs. And even you can add more actions to do. So this is a new way of doing things, and I hope it will help implementing better course formats in the future. So that's all from me.